So this is NoVA Weekend Warriors, and typically we are focused on recreational and new to fitness athletes and the health, wellness, and fitness professionals that work with them. But today we're going to broaden that out a little bit, and we are going to be talking to a wide variety of massage therapists who not only work with athletes, but work with all sorts of clientele. And we are going to be recording today, which is June 24th, 2020. And we are still in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic. As states start to reopen and have their reopening phases, we are kind of stuck with where massage should fall within that realm. And that varies drastically state by state. Many of us are weighing different considerations, the risks, the benefits, to determining if, when, and how to return to practice and to our clients. There are a ton of really great resources out there as massage therapists navigate that as a whole. ABMP, I think, has one of the best resource pages where everything's kind of consolidated together. Allissa, who is on the call today, and I'll introduce her in a moment, is with Massage Business Blueprint. She has some wonderful resources, including interviews with Ruth Werner, who is our, I guess we call her our pathology queen for massage therapy, and Healwell, who we have Cal on the phone with today, or on the video today. Cal is with Healwell, and Healwell has some wonderful resources for massage therapists as they navigate that as well. But one of the kind of issues that I keep coming back to, and so I thought it would be great to get everybody on the call, is I am still struggling with and still kind of trying to come to terms with massage therapy and how we navigate and how we interpret do no harm and risk and benefit ethically, and analyzing that when it comes to massage therapy in a time of COVID-19. I think right now we have some online groups that are normally, well, I don't know if I'd say they are normally supportive, but that normally we can kind of go to kind of ask those questions. And the public ones right now, what I'm finding is we have kind of a polarizing group of people who are, let's stay open fully and completely because we are a part of healthcare and we are essential in their minds. And then we have a group that is on the other end of the spectrum that is kind of, we should stay closed until there's a vaccine. And most of us, I feel like the majority of us really fall somewhere in between that, or like myself, are still kind of figuring it out. And I think our voices are getting a little lost in the shuffle between the two other polarizing voices that are kind of on the yes or no, right or wrong level. So with that being said, I would love to focus our conversation on how each of you kind of are navigating your own practices and kind of how you've come to terms with your own ideas around what that means, and if you're planning to reopen, if you've stayed open, all along that realm. So I've done enough talking right now that I think it is far more than time for me to introduce everyone. So I will do so in alphabetical order. We have Allissa Haines. Allissa, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We have Cal Cates. Welcome.
Hello, glad to be here.
Jeffrey Montoya.
Hi, nice to be here as well.
Great. And last but certainly not least, Tania Velasquez.
Thank you so much, Meg, for having us and for holding this space. It's good to be here. I'm meeting so many of you across the screen for the first time. Thank you.
All right, perfect. So I am going to jump in and I'm just going to go back in that order. And I'd like to, Alyssa, do you want me to have you not go first?
No, I'm good. I'm ready.
Okay. All right. Perfect. I know you're always ready. It's wonderful. Alyssa, do you want to tell me a little bit about yourself and your practice and maybe a little bit about Massage Blueprint, and then you can kind of like go into how you've navigated this and kind of where you're standing and how you're interpreting do no harm.
Yeah, so first, one of the things I do is I run a community and an online learning portal for massage therapists, and that's massagebusinessblueprint.com is our website. And then you can pay to be a premium member. And right now it's free for 30 days and then $5 a month. Once we're all working after this pandemic situation, that's going to go up. So just know if you're watching this in like 2021, probably not $5 a month anymore. But anyhow, that's actually how I met Meg. Meg is one of our premium members. So that's the one thing I do, but otherwise, my real gig is a full-time practicing massage therapist, or at least it was until March 12th. I have a fairly full practice, 17 to 20 patients a week, a big variety that I've accumulated over 15 years. More and more people who are looking for help with anxiety. I do oncology massage, and a few other little bits in there, some migraine stuff. But it's a really varied and general practice. Up until a couple months ago, I ran a space and I subletted space to 5 other practitioners, 4 massage therapists and an acupuncturist. In May, after we had been closed for a while, I realized that even if we were all back to work fairly quickly, which none of my people wanted to be back to work fairly quickly, I was not going to be able to keep an office with many practitioners safe. I wasn't going to go in there 3 times a day to clean. And as much as I love and trusted my renters, I didn't feel comfortable that everyone would keep up with the protocols the way I would want to. So I shut down that office. I moved everything out. My stuff's in a storage space, and I'm treading water right now. I am not sure what to do. And I think like many, many practitioners right now, one day I feel really good about the idea of returning to work in a couple of weeks. Now I'm in Massachusetts, and we're doing great. We have the lowest infection rate in the country right now. We're doing really well. We are in phase 2, step 2, and that means that I could have gone back to work on Monday, June 22nd. I don't have an office. And that hitting that like milestone of you can go back if you want to, and seeing a lot of my very local colleagues go back has been super terrifying. So on some days I think, yeah, I'm ready. And then another day I read through the regulation, or I hear about a colleague who already yesterday got a call from a client they saw on Monday, and that client's son spiked a fever and they were taking him in for testing. And that therapist already 2 days in is like, what do I do? I mean, it's just the client's son. I had contact with the client. It was yesterday. What do I do? And nobody had a good answer to that. And that was really scary. So in that, I've never really held the do no harm motto in my head. That's never been like a big part of my vernacular or figuring out how to work with any client or a complex client. That's not like a phrase that meant a lot to me before this, which I've always done my best to do no harm. It's just not a phrase that really clicked with me, right? So hearing that a lot in the last couple of months has been weird, because in my head, I'm like, do no dumbass. Like, do no stupid. Do nothing without context.
Don't be an idiot.
Right? So do nothing without a bunch of thinking. On the least complex, easiest client you will ever have, you still don't do anything without a bunch of thinking. You don't do anything without a thorough intake form, without a good verbal intake to find what they forgot to tell you on that intake form, without checking in with a client during, so this all feels really weird. And I'll tell you, and I'll promise I'll try to wrap this up. I have had the last 24 hours have kind of been big for me in this area, because I have scheduled a client for Saturday. Now in Massachusetts, we are allowed to do home visits right now. And I am very aware that many of the resources and guidelines right now say home visits not a good idea, right? So in general, not a good idea. I thoroughly agree with that. However, I'm not doing anything without a bunch of thinking. So I went through this whole process and talked to a couple of colleagues, like walked through what are the red flags I'm missing? What are the clients, or what are the questions that I need to make sure that I ask before I decide if I should be doing this or not, right? So I went through that with this client yesterday. And it's a new client, which is even weirder, but it's someone who reached out to me a couple months ago. They are homebound, they're mobile, but they're homebound. They've got lung cancer. They've got some pain in the shoulder, some restrictions from some treatments a couple of years ago. And I know I did my conversation yesterday. I hit all the points. I had like 3 different checklists. I was on the phone for like 40 minutes and they were so gracious about it. I cannot find a red flag outside of like any red flag that would be up if this was a regular time. Like, yeah, the littlest red flag right now, like we're in a pandemic. However, this person doesn't have any exposure to the outside world. They're mobile. They're otherwise fairly healthful except for some of the issues around the cancer, which I'm trained to work with. And I've asked the questions. And I am mostly secluded. I am the safest person to go work on them right now. I am, except for the grocery store like stuff, I'm mostly secluded. I am probably more isolated than most of the massage therapists around here. So I am the safest person to see them. And, are they comfortable in a mask? Is that going to be a whole thing? Like what? And I went through it and I've gone through it so many times. I cannot find a problem with this. Even though the guidelines say home visits, this is actually a perfect situation. They actually have an open air back room. Like it's good. It's going to be great. I'm terrified. I am terrified because I haven't massaged anybody in 100 days. I've never massaged anybody with glasses, a mask, and gloves, and a cape. I've never done this. Like, I'm terrified. And I had to tell this person, I hope you're a good sport because it's been a while and this is new for me. So there's like 20 textbook things where people be like, you should not do that. But I dove into the context. I'm not doing anything without a bunch of thinking. And I think that's what we have to do. I think we have to dive into the context. And I'm going to follow all the Massachusetts rules and then some. So while the initial response is, she should not be doing a home visit right now, we're in the middle of a pandemic. I did the thinking, I did the context, I did the consulting. And this is no less dangerous, no more dangerous than any massage I could give to anybody in my office at any time at this point. So social media is great for giving you a broad spectrum of ideas, right? But it's not good or conducive to these conversations with context and depth. So I'm glad that you're doing this. I hope that my situation, I'll report back after Saturday. I hope that provides some context of how we should be coming to these decisions. And I will caveat this with, part of me is terrified to tell this story because I don't want anyone to think that my story is giving them permission to go do a home visit to whoever they want with a complicated medical condition this weekend, because that's not the case. But I want us to be able to have better and deeper conversations that hit the red flags that we need to watch for and make our decisions well. I did not learn how to do this in school. I didn't learn how to do this in college. I didn't learn how to do this in massage school. And I am so grateful that I took classes with Ruth Werner and Tracy Walton and Cal Cates, and that I've been studying these things so that I am a practitioner who can make these decisions now. There are situations I can't make decisions on, and I hope that I have the humility to step back from them and say, no, this is not a good one. This is not a good one for me. And I've done that. There's plenty of people I don't see because I don't have expertise in that area. And I want everyone to be able to dive into the context and the thoughtfulness of these situations and make the best decision for their environment, their type of massage. The work I do is super light. It's safest for almost everyone every day. And figure the environment, the type of massage, the level of seclusion, the situation in your state, and make those decisions. I went on way longer than I intended. I'm sorry.
No.
That's where I'm at.
It's an important conversation. It's an important conversation. And I think that one of the biggest takeaways for me, right, is we're now at a point where I think on many levels, right, the past 2-3 months have brought up an ability for me to say what I don't know and to be more confident in saying, hey, I don't have this all figured out, so let's have a conversation about it. And I think that's first and foremost. And the second thing is, and I think that's the reason why I want to have it this way, is it's so easy to think in right and wrong and yes and no. And it's so easy to throw out there, do no harm. And what does that mean? And what is the critical thinking that's way more important than that? So I'm not going to go on and on. I want to roll it over to Cal and kind of just get your view and kind of where you are in regards to breaking that down and the ethics behind it. And of course, tell us a little bit about yourself and Healwell.
So thanks again, Meg, for having us all on and having this conversation. I've really been appreciating that. I don't know who your audience typically is for NoVA Weekend Warriors, but I imagine it's more clients than therapists, and you've really been taking on the topics that you wouldn't think clients would care about, but they probably do care about. So thank you for doing that. I am the executive director of a nonprofit that's based here in Arlington, and we primarily provide massage therapy to people in hospitals. We partner with palliative care teams, cancer programs, some outpatient centers, memory care centers. Basically, if a Healwell massage therapist is touching you or your family member, your life has been touched by serious illness. We conduct research as well as continuing education to prepare therapists to do exactly what Allissa just walked us through, really. When people come to our courses, we assume they already know what to do with their hands, but they often don't know what to do with their mouths. And we try to help that change a bit and how to sort of use their hearts and their minds and their mouths together to make what they do with their hands of maximum value and greatest service to our fellow humans. So I have a small private practice still. It's been about 16 years that I've been seeing people out of my home, and I see on a busy week, maybe 5 people. And again, most of the people that I see found me because they were going through cancer treatment or they live with chronic illness. So in terms of COVID, kind of people who are in the high risk category, which is debatable across the board, because as we learn more about COVID, it doesn't affect certain demographics. I mean, we do see some definite trends, but we're lying to ourselves if we say like young people don't get it, or some of the stories that we try to tell ourselves to put distance between us and this potentially kind of scary virus. So for us at Healwell, we actually stopped on March 13th. We reached out to all of our hospital partners and said, we see what's coming. We know that we can work safely, but we know that our area is going to be hit really hard, and everyone is worried about PPE shortages and just making sure that the frontline providers will have what they need. So we're going to stand down until we see how this virus is going to affect our area. And, certainly when it first hit, the idea of any additional people who weren't essential in a life and death kind of way, bringing their germs into a space where people are already compromised didn't make sense. And so for us, it seemed a very clear ethical decision to say, they didn't want us to leave, but we said, we'll be back. Let's just wait and see. And I think you're going to have your hands full for the next little bit anyway. So we'll stay in touch. You let us know how infection rates are going and how things are being managed. And then in my private practice, the same. I just said, I don't know when I'll be back, but right now we just don't know enough. And let's just keep all of us as safe as possible. So as Virginia has moved forward, we have been in touch with our clinical partners throughout this time and just kind of saying, how's it going? Because, we've been in some of these hospitals for the last 10 or 12 years. So we work very closely and have personal relationships with the nurses and physicians and PTs and people on site, and how's it going for you guys? And a couple of the hospitals have reached out and said, within the next couple weeks, depending on what happens with phase 2 of the virus, or the second wave, we're interested in seeing what it would look like to have you guys come back. And one of the hospitals who's ready for us to come back pretty soon, they said, okay, like, we definitely want you to come back, and here are the things that you'll need to do. And we said, well, that's the stuff we always used to do. And they were like, right. So, I think people think, oh gosh, the hospital, why would you go there? I'm like, I'd rather be in the hospital than in somebody's house. So I think for us, it's really just going to be about workflow and patient load in terms of when we can go back as hospital-based massage therapists. And I think that the thing that gets underestimated or isn't well understood in the community is that the infrastructure around working in a clinical setting and the culture of preventing disease transmission is so well established that it's not the same as going back to your private practice and having, like what Allissa described. Like, I have other people who work with me, and I don't know how dedicated they are to the cleaning and disinfection, policies and procedures that I'm going to put forward. And, I feel like working in the hospital, and particularly we work with people who wind up on our list because they're nearing the end of their lives. We are used to understanding what we do and sort of following the rules as a truly life and death consideration. So I think as private practice therapists, that's just not our frame of mind, and that's pretty reasonable. In terms of what Allissa was describing as well, I think it's really hard for state health departments and for professional associations to create a guideline that's going to work for everybody. And I think what it seems like massage therapists are hating is all the thinking, and I say that in the most compassionate way possible. It's like they just want, tell me what to do. And I can't, because I don't know what your client's home is like. I don't know what your relationship is like with your clients. I don't know you and your personal dedication to not transmitting disease. So, talking with colleagues who have written textbooks, they say, like, it's one of the most agonizing projects because you're trying to make it so nobody will make a mistake based on what you've written or what you've left out. And you can't, you have to make sort of a broad one size fits all, and then just trust that practitioners have the discernment and the critical thinking skills to make the choices that are going to continue to limit spread. And, I also, you and I will burn together, Allissa, because I saw a family that I see in their home. I met them when I was working years ago at Children's Hospital, and their daughter has ongoing complications from treatment that she had. And I used to see them once a month, just the whole family, the daughter who was in the hospital, the mom, the dad, and they have a younger child now. And it's such a big support for them. And so I reached out to them and I said, I'm thinking about maybe seeing a client or two. Tell me what you guys have been up to, during the quarantine. And they kind of give me a lowdown of what their contacts have been. And they really understand what's at risk here. And so I trusted them to be honest with me. I saw them. I came home and washed everything. And I'm not a germaphobe, but I was like, whoa, I don't want to see anybody again anytime soon. And I might see them monthly, but I don't know that I'll see many more people. And I feel like I did everything right. I feel like I followed all the steps. I did all the preamble where we had a conversation on the phone, and we were both really like, I made explicit statements about what we were, what risks we were both entering into. And I think that I did the best I could do, and it still felt unsafe enough. And I think when we talk about those home visits, because a lot of our work at Healwell is also, we've been getting a lot of calls from people who've been homebound with illness saying, like, are you guys open? Can you send a therapist? And it's one thing to see a family once a month. It's another thing to do house calls and be exposing yourself and those clients to each other, directly and indirectly. So I think, again, it's about really think about what's involved here. Healwell put a video out a couple weeks ago where we demonstrated just a starting idea about how to work around if people don't want to wear a mask when they're face down on the face rest. It is still getting pounded with comments and critiques from therapists who are like, well, this doesn't work and that doesn't. Right. It's an idea. I don't know what your face rest looks like. I don't know what your face rest cover looks like. This is just, if people don't want to wear a mask face down, what I'm trying to tell you is that's not an okay answer. So we still have to worry about droplets, get creative. And I think that we're just not good at thinking completely through the steps of what are the concerns here and how do I mitigate them?
Yeah. Well, and discussing it, I struggle with our ability to have open and critical discussions without this, I don't know what else to say, venom.
Yeah.
Without this, you know, and I know Tania will speak to you in a moment, who sent me a wonderful article on kind of why that happens to us in human nature.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just, I wish it's something we could work on. And, you know, and we have some like really wonderful terms that we go to, like you can't read tone in social media. And I beg to differ, but you know, like it's right. Always, yeah, it always just seems like it drives us further apart than it does in making, you know, I think anything we can do to kind of think more critically and create an atmosphere of thinking more critically and taking those ideas and seeing how they fit based on who you are. So thank you so much for that, Cal. I really appreciate that. I'm going to move on and introduce Tania. Tania, I think you're on mute right now. So I'll have you come off of mute. If you can introduce yourself, and I think especially right now, what I'm really interested in hearing from Tania is in New York City. So your kind of frame of reference, I think, is much different. I'm in Northern Virginia. And, you know, we were in a little bit of a hot spot, depending on what you look at. I don't know, we're coming down, we're not, who knows. But I would love to hear from you, Tania.
Thank you, Megan. Before I go on, I want to thank the people who are doing all the work and compiling these resources and making sense out of it. I wish I could do more. I'm a instructor at Pacific College of Health and Science. And before I continue, what I say are my views and my views alone, and does not represent the school in any way. So, you know, I'm an instructor also besides having a practice, and I've been, for the past couple months, having to adapt everything to an online format, which has been no walk through the park, but we're figuring it out as we do with things. So I've been busy with that and not being able to put resources together. So thank you all who have been doing that on the groups. Healwell, I recommend a lot of your stuff. Allissa, I know, works her tail off in a lot of capacity. And Jeffrey, I've seen him around, and I know he's a very passionate and integrous business owner. And yeah, being in New York City, there is a lot more nuance. And I have cousins that are nurses that are on the front lines, clients. I've lost people, you know, throughout COVID, 2 family members, one COVID related, one that was COVID complicated by all the things that had to be navigated in a hospital setting. So I don't take this lightly, you know, and some people, I've gone through every range of emotions about opening, not reopening. And 2-3 months ago, my headspace was very different than it is now. We didn't know anything 2 or 3 months ago. And there was, I felt, a real urgency for everybody, the profession collectively, to pause and take a step back until we could figure it out. But I was also very kindly put in my place about that assumption that everybody was able to afford to do that. And I'm not trying to politicize this, but not everybody is getting an unemployment check. Not everybody can afford the privilege of, well, I'm just not going to work. I've heard suggestions in the group, well, massage therapists are going to have to find other careers, which I have to laugh out loud at. That to me, that those suggestions come from a place of very high privilege and narrow-mindedness. It's not a reality, right? And nor should we have to, even if you do have that privilege. If you want to go back to work and are following the rules and guidelines and are doing so intelligently. We're not speaking about the people, and we know they exist, that are extremely careless. It's like, I'm going to work, you know, like everything's cool and fine, COVID's a hoax. So we're not speaking about those wackos or absolute wackos. I don't think anybody here on the screen, and most of the people, I'd like to think higher of most people than that, are like that. And what I see is the struggling, and with that struggle, a lot of shaming going on. So I took that stance for a minute, not a long time, but of course, in the confusion, I think we were all kind of like, okay, you know, never work again. But now, as the reality is setting in, some kind of reality for now, which is subject to change, but I'm in the position where I really need to serve as a role model, right? First and foremost, and also being mindful of students that I know who have put everything on the line and taken this risk to enter a profession that is meaningful to them, that I feel is meaningful to the world, right? And then tell them, oh no, but you can't work because that's not, but I'm going to stand here and sell you a class and do this. I see a lot of that going on. Don't work, but buy my class, you know? And we really gotta take a step back. The shaming and the calling out of people's integrity is, to me, insane. It's preposterous. Because you decide to go back to work doesn't mean that you're somebody who lacks integrity. Because I don't think any of us are, the majority of us are deciding to go back to work flippantly. Right? I'm in New York City. So social distancing is a nice idea, but it's not a realistic concept. There's 8 million of us here on the conservative end. For me, along with Allissa and Cal, my option, I gave up my space. So I was renting in downtown Manhattan. And luckily, I was in a position where I was not bound to another several months or year of a lease. Some people are. I very much recognize my position of privilege and that I do have options, and that I did have a savings, and that I can teach and do other things. And that other people don't have that option, right? First and foremost. So with that, what seems safest to me in this climate is doing out calls, right? I can bike somewhere. That's a lot safer to me than taking a subway. A lot of us don't have cars here. I can go to a client's house who I know well, who has a window that they can open and a fan that they can turn on, which is safer than the room that I was using before, which had no windows and ventilation. There's so much nuance there. My range of clients, I work with a lot of creative professionals and also martial artists mostly, and that type of athletic fear. I'm a martial artist also. Everything I do involves close contact, you know. My life involves contact. I do a form of dance that it's basically Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in motion. Like, I don't want to do anything else. I don't want to change careers. I'm not going to do that. That to me is not entertaining. And also, by the time I do that, if I were, 3 years is going to have passed, and then it will likely be okay to get back to work. So that logic doesn't, okay, that's cute. If you can do that, do that. I'm not doing that. But is it to say, like, we can mince these matters of safety, and I'm not going to repeat what other people said. Yes, everything's a case-by-case basis. There's nuance. If it's a client I don't know and not familiar with and don't know what their home space is like and they don't have ventilation, I'm not going to feel comfortable practicing there. Somebody else, where I can cruise on my bike, got their table, or I can work very comfortably on the floor. Wear my mask, you wear the mask. I'll wear the smock. I'll follow the rules. I'll wash everything. I got a backpack that's waterproof. I could spray everything I could possibly think of. I will do, and understand that there is still risk involved. for the people that are like, no, never work, nobody work. If you don't do what I do, you're a terrible person. You have no integrity, and you're typhoid Mary. You know, that's that's not what we're doing here. Like, with that, I hope these therapists that are saying never work because do no harm, that you're not eating chicken, because if you eat chicken, you're putting people at the meat plants in danger, right? Is it okay to put their lives at risk because you want your chicken? But we can't go back to work in the safest way possible, acknowledging risks. You know, there's risk there's always been risk in massage. Now that's kicked up a notch, but we're aware of that. And I think a lot of the pedantic tones that have been taking place, assuming that people are not aware of that risk, it's a little insulting, it's a little silly, like equal parts of this. And it's a little disjointed from reality and having compassion for your peers and trusting that people can be a little smarter than you are assuming that they're not being. You know, so it's and I think about, you know, my current and former students a lot with this. Can't imagine like just having graduated school, and maybe that sits in my brain differently because of that position, but that's something I consider a lot. Like, what voice are we going to be for that generation coming in? You know, and I think it's almost easier for them because they're going to have to adapt to this on the fly. We have to unlearn and change a lot of doing what we did, how we were used to doing it. But the fresh crusaders can be like, okay, this is the new thing. We'll do this and we'll learn how to work that way. So in a way, they might have it a little easier to figure out. But, you know, in a nutshell, if you are not comfortable working, and I might feel comfortable one week and say, you know what, I might need to take a couple weeks off, but I also have the luxury of doing that, right? There are risks and contracts we enter with each other every day. And most important thing is that we're being upfront with ourselves. I, for instance, even when restaurants reopen, if I'm deciding to work again, I'm not going to eat in restaurants because that increases my risk of exposure. Not all therapists are going to do that, and we can kick rocks about it because we can't control what other people do. You know, and this idea that we can, or, you know, shaming our peers who are really upstanding, solid people, I don't think is the way to go. And like you said, I think Maggie used the word venom. Right? There's so much of that. And I think it says a lot, far more about the people that are spewing the venom than who they're spewing it at. Like, why are you doing that? We're all confused. We're all lost. We're all kind of paddling around, waiting for somebody to throw us a life vest with the answers, and that's not going to happen. A vaccine may not ever happen. Just like a flu vaccine is 50% effective, if that's what people are waiting for, you might have a long wait, right? So we're either and there will continue to be loss, unfortunately, which is heartbreaking. I've experienced it. It's like March was literally one of the worst months of my life as far as like bookends of loss. I feel for that. But then for me to say, I still have made a decision. I don't know how. We're not reopened yet. We're in phase 2. Massage is set to reopen in phase 3. I might be okay, I'll work this week, but next week I'm going to cancel those clients because I'm feeling weird, or I was at risk, or I don't know. I don't know if it's allergies or Rona coming for me. Like, there's a lot to juggle here. And yeah, some people are going to do, like Allissa said, the dumbass thing. They're not going to care. They're going to cut corners. They're going to be like, all right, client, don't wear a mask. I won't wear a mask either. We won't tell anybody, right? We have integrity. We know who we are. And I feel very much at peace and at ease with that. And I just wish people would chill, because you cannot make clear decisions from a frantic state of judging. If that's what you're busy doing, like, you need to worry about yourself. Stop, like, worry about yourself. Like, don't come for me, don't come at me, don't come at other people. I might feel like this week, I might change my mind next week. Week after that, I might be like, you know, all's good, and this is where I think we all are. And you know, all we can do is our best, and understand there's other people with different positions that have families to feed, that have children to feed, that don't have the luxury of private practice, that are working for an employer that might not care as much about their well-being, and that's a struggle for them, and they're trying to figure that out too. How am I going to feed my kids? I went to the school to change my life and improve my life, but now I'm in this really weird position. So there's so much nuance there, and I don't know how to answer these questions. You know, Cal said, I don't know what is best for you. I don't know if you want to, you know, bike 4 miles to somebody's house, lock it up and change clothes and do that. I'm okay with doing that for now. But yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Tania. I really appreciate your opinion. And I think that, you know, there's a couple of things for me that one is, I think that, you know, certainly if someone is endangering our profession, I don't have a problem with someone standing up against that. But I think that when we're talking about these different nuances and these different decisions that each of us are making, there's going to be so many different kind of things that we need to look at in order to do that. I think one of the biggest takeaways so far for me, and then we'll get to Jeffrey because I want him to have some time as well, is, you know, again, it's just, to me, it keeps coming back to that there's no, it's not as easy as 3 words. We have to look at things in a lot more detail than just those 3 words. And we really need to look at things a little bit more deeply. You know, when we're done here, I'm going to go to Jeffrey, and then I'll finish up with just a couple of my own little anecdotes, and then I will get you all back to your day because I appreciate you taking a full hour today. Jeffrey, would you like to go ahead and just tell me a little bit about yourself and kind of where you are right now?
Sure. So I love the wisdom that has been shared by everyone so far. I totally agree with the insights. I am the owner of a massage practice. My business is Milwaukee Reiki. It's located just out of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. My business employs 9 licensed massage therapists and 2 Reiki masters. So I have 11 employees and myself who work for me. And I'm also a massage educator. I teach both at the entry level as well as continuing education classes. In February, I left my teaching job at a pretty well-established salon and spa school with the goal of starting my own massage business. And that has been kind of delayed a little bit because of COVID-19. But my school will be the Academy of Health. It'll be a nonprofit school offering both entry-level as well as continuing education. And one of the things I wanted to do was offer online entry-level education, kind of a blended model of online and in-person. And, you know, if there is a silver lining to COVID, it is that all of a sudden people are more open to online education for massage therapy than ever before. Tania mentioned kind of all of her work that she's doing to convert. Necessity is the mother of invention. So, so that's my kind of where I am. I'm also a doctoral student studying health professions education at Logan University, and I am just on the tail end of that degree. I should graduate in August. I'm finishing up my research. And actually, again, COVID has given me a really nice time away from everything to work on my research project. And so that has been a positive side for me personally. In Wisconsin, we found ourselves in a unique situation because our governor excluded all licensed health and allied health providers from his Safer at Home order. So massage therapists, as with all licensed and allied health providers, have been able to legally practice. And that caused a lot of anguish in our state because many therapists felt that we aren't essential. Why is the governor excluding us? And I felt, well, I agree that we're not essential, but I think we're very important in the health profession. And but what I think those who were struggling didn't realize is that every health profession was excluded from the governor's order. So for instance, dentists were excluded from the governor's order, but most of them closed except for certain emergency situations. And it really then, I think, made us put on that hat as a licensed health provider to decide what do we need to do and what are the ethics around that and what are kind of our priorities. And I feel like massage therapists, at least in my state, really struggled with that because they felt, well, because we can be open, we should be open. And that was a difficult conversation to have with people. People are also worried about if the governor's order excludes us, then am I going to be eligible for unemployment or other assistance that other people may be that may be offered to people. So we had to kind of work with those issues. For myself, I did decide to close my business, and we were closed from March 17th until May 26th, and we reopened on May 26th. We had started, me and some other therapists had really worked on, even before the professional associations and others started giving us guidance on what those procedures might be, we started looking at the Center for Disease Control guidelines and OSHA documents and trying to piece together as best we could what reopening might look like. We actually managed to get that document into the hands of our department, our State Department of Health Services. And they said, well, we don't really approve outside guidelines, but these, we looked at them and they look reasonable, and we'll have some guidelines down the road. And so fortunately, all of those guidelines have come for us or come out, and we've been able to see that there's some really consistent trends in them and some consistent best practices. When I decided to reopen, it was really an ethical decision for me. And we have heard a lot, as you mentioned, about this do no harm, this kind of magic ethical standard that people have put out there. But that's really not all there is to behaving ethically. We heard Allissa kind of go through her situation with her in-home visit. Tania talked about some of the ethics as well, and Cal kind of the healthcare setting. And so I think it's important. My undergraduate degree was in philosophy. So if we go into classical ethical thinking, which is still the standard of ethics for health professions and other professions such as law, we're finding that there are actually 6 traditional values or principles of classical ethical thinking. One is non-maleficence, or what we are calling do no harm. When Hippocrates came up with this, medicine was largely superstitious. And so it was kind of like, don't make the disease worse than the cure. And so for us, to take it as absolutely never have a potential exposure to harm just is not realistic. And it's not the way it's used in any of medicine. Otherwise, you would never get a surgery because there's always risk to anesthetics. You would never take a medicine because you're always at risk of side effects. And so it's not really about completely avoiding harm. It's about minimizing the potential to do harm or to leave a worse outcome. The other principles are beneficence. And that's really about what is your intention. Your intention is to be helpful and to have positive outcomes. Autonomy is an important principle, and that's the principle for people to make decisions for themselves. And this is important, I think, both from the perspective of the person who is seeking massage, as well as the practitioner. And this, Tania mentioned also, people that may not have that option of whether or not to go back to work based on the status of their employer, their business of their employer being open or not open. And that was tough for me. I really wanted to come to consensus with my staff, that my staff felt better about going back to work and what their decisions about going back to work would have on unemployment benefits and all of those type of things. And really, that was kind of a first step for me, was making sure that my staff felt comfortable and felt committed to making the changes and taking the precautions that would be necessary to come back to work as safely as possible. After autonomy and beneficence, veracity is one of the other principles of traditional ethics, which is being honest and truthful. And that's kind of like full disclosure. And I heard a lot of that in some of the examples given, that people need to know what are the risks of exposure to the disease or other risks related to massage. Ruth Werner has been writing and talking a lot about complications of COVID-19 that may affect the blood and clotting in the blood. And what does that mean for us as massage therapists? Fidelity is the other principle, and that's just keeping the commitments that we make in our profession, as well as justice. And so I think that is really an area, and maybe there's even a greater consciousness around justice right now in our society, that really asks us how we do that as a field. We may need to look at, what are the security blankets for the people who work as massage therapists, and how do we represent our field in a way that massage therapists are secure in their employment, especially massage therapists who are people of color or Black or don't fit into the mainstream. I think this is going to have some really positive outcomes overall. I think we can look at different issues in our field. I think we definitely are looking at what are our safety and sanitation procedures. Cal mentioned in the hospital, it's very different than in most private practices. I asked the question, why is that? Is it a lack of training? Is it a lack of commitment? There were very few changes we had to make in my practice as far as sanitation, because we had already been doing things that were very safe. One of the Facebook groups, I couldn't believe the arguments over how many times you could use a blanket to give a massage. And I thought, I don't want to get a massage in those places where you're using an unlaundered blanket for a week. And so I think these are things that are gonna come out of this for our field that will make us stronger, and that will form in education. So how we form our upcoming therapists. Tania was correct, I think, that the new therapists are going to have an easier time because we're going to be training in safer practices, and that's just going to continue into the profession. So I'm really hopeful that this will have some positive impacts for our profession. I feel very fortunate to be back to work. The longer we're working, the more comfortable I'm feeling with it. We're doing extra time between clients, staggering our appointments to try to limit the kind of passing in the hallway type contact, doing a really good job of safety and sanitation, using PPE, all of those type of things. And I feel very confident that we are minimizing the risks as much as possible, and while also giving people access to massage, which is a very important, if not essential, part of healthcare. So that's where I'm at. I really feel that what everyone has mentioned about critical thinking and going through the ethical process for your own unique situation, not only in your business but every unique client that you see, it's just really important right now.
I thank you so much, and I think that when you talked about kind of those 5 pillars, 5, right? It tells you how much ethics I've done. But I think when you went through those pillars, that's a really good reminder to each of us that, again, just to go back to, it's not just a sentence, it's not just a few words, there's a much larger thing. But I think the point that I wanted to make was when I was trying to figure out where we fall, because again, we don't even really have a definition of what massage is, because every state has their own definition of what it is. Every state has their own scope of practice, or just doesn't list it, right? Just lists the definition and leaves it at that. And so I think that is one of the things that makes it really hard for us to come with an overriding decision. The other thing is, like I talked about earlier, and sometimes we fall under personal care, and sometimes we fall under healthcare. Sometimes we're said that, you know, we are essential, and then even what the word essential means and is debated, and where we should fall. And so there's all of these things that we have been debating since far before I was a massage therapist, that all come into play. And I was like, well, you know, if you want to place us there, like, where do we fall, right? Because, like, listen, someone is not going to live or die based on getting a massage. But, you know, right now in Virginia, we are having non-essential surgeries, elective surgeries, right? So, like, if I get a cosmetic surgery on my nose or my chin, and that is purely for cosmetic reasons, I can do that right now. And so I don't know, that's kind of, I'm not saying by any means this is coming out wrong. I'm not saying I'm a doctor in any way, shape, or form. Let's just get that out there. But I thought, you know, what that doctor does, if they decide to practice, right, is they're having a conversation with their client and going over, here are the risks. Here is the yes, here is the no, here is what could happen, here is what might happen, and really with this, here is what we don't know may or may not happen. We don't really know if we know that we believe that me wearing a mask and you wearing a mask and us being in a room that's more open and has more airflow, we believe that those are things that are going to lower the risk. But we know that they're not going to mitigate the risk completely. And so, as consenting adults, are we both signing off on that? Now, you know, for the record, I'm not getting any elective surgery anytime in the near future, but, but I don't know. I mean, what's that?
You could if you wanted to.
I could if I wanted to, yes, yes. So I don't know. I mean, I think that those were just kind of the free flow, you know, thoughts that kind of were going through my head as I was kind of determining all of this. One of the other things is that there was a really good article in the Lancet that I came up against, and that kind of, again, spoke to healthcare professionals and what it actually meant to do no harm. And so I'll include that in the show notes in case anyone wants to look at that. Again, we have to look at that through a much different lens because we are not doctors. But I think understanding how they interpret do no harm was very helpful in me kind of coming to terms with what that meant to me. And then the other thing was, I think it's like number 2 on the Code of Ethics for ABMP members. It actually starts with do no harm. But then after that goes into more detail of what that means. And that kind of speaks a lot to what Jeffrey was saying, right? How that is not just or many of us were saying that's not just a statement. So I think that all of your perspectives has certainly helped me. I hope it helps others as well as we kind of navigate this. I invite anyone who would like to have some open conversations to feel free to reach out to me in regards to what this means. I love that we had a wide variety of people between people who are closed completely and people that are opening and practicing with some guidelines. Again, I think Cal said it best, you know, it all comes down to critical thinking, right? And we can't tell you what to do. It would be so nice. It would be so nice to just have it handed over, but that is not the world we live in. And honestly, we're not good massage therapists if that is all we do. Yeah. So thank you all very much. Does anyone have any closing comments or anything they would like to say before we wrap up? Tania?
Allissa, I'm stealing do no dumbass. I think those are with attribution, of course.
Yes, yes.
But, that's the biggest takeaway. And I wish, like we've done here, like people on Facebook would communicate more with each other and assume less about each other. That includes with clients, like, you know. And I think, if anything, this is going to demand of us to be better communicators and nurture more meaningful therapeutic alliances with our clients. Figure out who are our clients, and, you know, maybe, you know, I don't want to work with everybody. So that's, you know, looking for the silver linings. And thank you all for your input. I learned a lot from all of you, so thank you.
Well, and I think I would throw into, since you do have some folks in your audience, Meg, who are clients, that to empower clients like we do in the hospital to take control of your healthcare. And you also have a right to know what you need to see in a practice space to feel safe there. And if you get there and they're not doing what you understand to be safe, to ask for them to do that, or to just maybe find another place to get massage, that is also within your rights.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I think that's something that you've kind of just put a bug into my head and that I haven't done yet, but kind of talk about, maybe do a video in my office about like what the guideline, because now we have so many different words, right? What the mandatory requirements are for our state, what the recommendations are for each of our organizations, and then beyond that, anything else that we are doing or not doing, right? Allissa had a great conversation with Ruth yesterday that talked about, you know, like listen, our state, you might not love our state guidelines, but our state guidelines are our state guidelines. And so those at a minimum, the ones that are requirements or whatever they decide to frame it as, we just had to change from recommendations to mandatory requirements in our state. So, you know, that's your minimum, but that doesn't mean that that's where you have to stop. You can do more and you can follow based on those items as well. Thank you all very much. But I think my idea was now to go back, that I would do a video. I know I'm all over the place today. I was telling Allissa and Jeffrey before we started that I've never, like, I have a lot of anxiety to begin with. And today my anxiety was so high because it was like the first time that I was really going to consume all of this from like multiple ends of the spectrum, right? Instead of just being like, yeah, I know it's there, but since I'm not opening, I don't have to quite do it yet, right? I don't have to quite think of it yet. But I think a video on what the requirements are and then what I'm doing is really good to let our clients know, even if they're not coming to see me, what they can expect and what they should expect in our states and in our country. Thank you all very, very much. I appreciate your time today. This was highly beneficial for me, and I'm sure to be beneficial for everyone else. Yeah, we're going to have some t-shirts. We're going to have some t-shirts made up. We had, Healwell did some t-shirts. What was it? Hold the hot potato. Yeah. So, that was our little thing. The state was going awesome. Back and forth from, yeah. The state said, talk to the board of your nursing. Board. Yeah, board of nursing. And then board of nursing said, no, don't talk to us, talk to the governor. And so it was going back and forth, and they were like, well, we got to hold the hot potato and figure it all out, which is like what we're doing today, right? And so now we're going to have a new hashtag courtesy of Allissa. So she's shaking her head. I don't know if she's...
No dumbass, hashtag. You did it. You did it.
My career is really taking off. This is your moment. Guys.
No,
you knew you went.
Trending.
Yeah. No. But in all seriousness, I think like the sediment, like is that, you know, we need to think critically. And so if Allissa would like, we can do hashtag think more critically. That's maybe more in line with her.
I'm comfortable with do no dumbass.
Okay.
It's a good one.
Well, thank you all very much to our audience today. Thank you for tuning in. If you have any questions, you can let me know, and we'll see you on the next episode of NoVA Weekend Warriors.
Thanks, Meg. Great.
Thank you, guys. Be safe.
Y'all. Bye.